All right. So, hi everyone. Thanks for joining. And today we have Gaurav Agrawal, and he has about 7 years of experience in data analytics and in service based companies as well as product based companies. So today we'll be getting to know about his whole experience in data analytics, like, in the whole data domain. So thanks for joining, Gaurav. And so could you please introduce yourself?
Thanks, Ajit. Sure. Hi, my name is Gaurav, and I currently work with Walmart as a senior data scientist. And my journey into analytics started from back in 2017. Right, so I come from a Tier 3 college, Jabalpur Engineering College in my hometown. And from there on, right, during my third year of my college, right, I got introduced to this concept that there's something buzzing coming around machine learning, data science, right? And those were the fancy words. And to me, that thing was more around the salary part, right? To be very honest, right? Why I wanted to be a data scientist or get into this field was I felt that there was a lot of money. That was what I was hearing from all of my folks who were studying in IITs or were already working in some good companies, right? From there on, I got introduced to this concept with not clear understanding of what this field is, right? But that's how my journey started, right? And the last year was predominantly learning all of these tools, techniques, TK, and then trying to get into some job, right? Which I eventually got through an internship, then converted that into a full-time offer, and then my journey started. So that's how my journey has been, right? Without knowing what this field is really about, I started doing something about it, and then eventually I started figuring out as to what actually this field is, right? And how this field has been evolving in the last 6 7 years, right? From companies in service-based domain to now in product-based domain, right? There's a huge change that is coming up, especially with the introduction of Indian startups, right? They have probably are exceedingly high amount of data-driven decision making that is happening there, right? You pick any of the Indian ecosystem in the startup space, right? From Flipkart, Swiggy, Zomato, any company that you'll pick up, and you'll understand that look, it's not just the big names that are only there, but these startups, these organizations, right, have a huge amount of learning that they can provide you, and you can grow at a very faster pace. So that's a little bit about my journey, and that's just about me. Yeah.
So yeah, thanks for that brief introduction. So I think most of the people here are also interested in how actually did you transition from so you did computer science engineering in bachelor's, right? So how exactly, and there must be some courses of data science in that degree, right?
Yeah.
But you weren't really focused on data science in bachelor's. So how did you exactly transition from there to data science
So
or
here's
data
how
analytics?
things started, right? So it was very typical. I was into computer science, right? And the first couple of years, you did your normal college courses that was going around, right? And then things start to hit you, right? How do you get a job, right? And in my college, there were a couple of companies that come around, right? TCS and all of that. Plus, there was something called as Mu Sigma, right? So Mu Sigma was a very big name in the service domain, right? In analytics, right? So you had a lot of seniors who helped you understand, okay, the growth is actually pretty high, right? This is a growing field, and you can actually try for it, right? So my interest started to gain from that point of time, right? And also, right, initially I started coding, right? So I tried coding in sites like InterviewBit, which is now Scalar, right? So I used to code, right? I used to code a lot of data structures and algorithm, but eventually I would come to a point where I would not be able to succeed, right? So eventually I decided that look, this is not the path for me. I'm trying, but it's not happening, and maybe because there wasn't a lot of atmosphere in the college, right? Where you were not a lot of people were doing the same thing, right? You will always struggle. You did not have the right mentors, and that was the difficult part, right? So from that point of time, I decided, okay, this is not working really for me, and I really want to make a little bit bigger than TCS and Infosys. I do have a lot of respect for them, but you were naive at that point of time, right? You would just not think it through in that terms, right? So how do you get into a good salary or a good package? Then there's something called as data science, there's something called as analytics, machine learning, all of that, right? So those buzzwords started hitting me, and that is where my journey started, right? So how I started it out was picking up some courses, random courses from here and there, right? So I did not understand whether I should learn Python or R. I had some understanding of Python in my curriculum, right? So I started with Python, Then I also took a course on R, right? How naive you are that when you are learning one scripting language, you don't really need to learn R, but I would do that, right? And then and learning from YouTube and everywhere, right? But initial courses that I took was around, if I remember correctly, it was some site called as Data Quest, and I don't know if they are there or not, but that was pretty good at that point of time, right? So someone mentioned that this is good, I just took it out, right? Random courses here and there, which actually did not really added a lot of value, but that's how you started, right? And then copy pasting, right? This is what happened, right? So you saw something on GitHub and you started doing that, right? But eventually with time you realize that this is not the way to learn, right? You can just copy the code and you'll feel that wow, you've built a model, you've built a data science model, you've done that Titanic data set which everyone tries to do, and you're now good with it, right? But eventually you'll realize that you are actually not really learning, right? That is not how you learn. So that process eventually changed after 6 7 8 months, right? When I started trying for jobs, when I started applying for internships, and I was not getting succeeded, right? So how you improve from there on, right? So I started writing blogs. So I did a project, I started writing blog to ensure that I have an online visibility, right? So how was I different from anyone in my peer group, right? Everyone was doing what I was doing. So I did something extra, right? So I'll write a blog of whatever I've learned and whatever my outcomes were, right? And project did not mean about just SQL or Python or machine learning, right? When I understood that this is not how things work, right? A problem is a problem statement, that this is the problem statement and there is a solution to it, right? Which has some insights and some actionable outcomes for the business, right? So now the mind shift happened that look, this is how I'll have to do, right? So I'll randomly pick out something, some data set from available sites like Kaggle or the Indian government site, right, which has a lot of data floating in. Pick up any data that I was interested in. Let's say if I was interested in politics, right? So I'll pick that data. From that data, I'll do some very basic hypothesis and understanding of my thoughts. Try to create a visualization. Try to write a blog and say that this is the outcome of what it is, right? And then eventually, I did this for a lot of projects, like 7 8 projects I tried to write, or maybe 5 6. I'm not sure what that number was, but the idea was simple: that let's create something extra. Let's showcase your profile because I am not getting shortlisted anywhere. I am not getting an internship opportunity. And Mu Sigma, I didn't clear Mu Sigma in the written test, right? So I failed there. I failed miserably, and I thought that it's almost done for me, right? Now there's no way that I can go out beyond TCS and Infosys, right? So that's how I'll have to start, right? But eventually, when I got my first internship offer, right, when I went there, the person who shortlisted my profile, he mentioned that, I saw something very different from your profile as compared to others, and that was my blogs. And I placed all my links of blogs in my resume, right? So that is what online credibility was, right? And eventually it helped me. So those small things made a lot of difference, right? I was lucky a lot of times, right? In the interview process as well, I felt it, right? I did not know a lot of things, right? So my whole idea is for everyone to understand that you really don't need to know everything when you're starting, right? You need to know basics, but you need to know really, you need to have a very strong understanding of what you're doing, right? Tools are a very small part of your journey, right? The bigger change happens when you understand how you can make an impact into the business, right? Now when I've grown, right, when I moved from when I got my first internship, then I moved to a company called Students, and then to Swiggy, and then eventually to Walmart, right? I have seen that transition, that the people who rise in their career are not the best in tools, right? They might be good. They'll be able to solve any problem. Maybe they'll take half an hour more, right? But they have an exceptional capability of understanding the business, and they have an exceptional capability of telling the business that, look, might be what you are thinking is good, right? But here is a better solution that I am proposing, right? They understand the business problem equally well with what the business is doing, right? And that is where the change happens, right? That is where people really respect them, and they gain that trust from the stakeholders, and that is where the growth happens. And this is the same across data science, right? If you will understand, data science wasn't about building an ML model, right? It was about solving that problem. And I think me, Ashwet, Mithul, everyone have faced that same thing, right? That idea of initially doing dot fida code, right, eventually doesn't work in industry. When you really get into the work, you'll understand that, look, this is a very naive part, right? And the only impact that happens is it happens through the business. So that change was the major change that I believe I had to get along with my work, and that happened after I went into Swiggy. Right, the first couple of years was a struggle, of understanding if I'm not getting an ML project, it's not interesting. And what type of work I'm doing, right? So you struggle with that thought because you've not understood how the industry functions. And when you get a right mentor, right people who are working parallelly there, then the change happens. So for me, that change happened in Swiggy, and from there on, I think the growth happened. There on, you move to better types of work, right? You understood how work is actually done, how you solve a problem, and all of those things. My journey was something around that, right? From having no clue, then to doing something, then to understanding what that is, and then to eventually growing in that domain. So the growth happened from Swiggy onwards. That I'll say.
So I think you have had a really interesting journey over the 7-8 years. So in Swiggy you were an analytics manager, and in
My last role in Swiggy was of an
yeah,
analytics manager. So I
yeah,
joined there as a business analyst, the first layer of role. Then I got two promotions and moved to analytics manager there.
and now in Walmart you are a senior data scientist.
Walmart,
So
I'm a senior data
so
scientist. Yeah.
can you tell me like what is the difference between analytics and data science in terms of work?
So I'll give you a very good example, right? So all of you, right, and show me your hands when I ask this question, right? All of you have used Swiggy or Zomato in apps, right? So let's take this for an example, right? In Swiggy's app, right? When you see an ETA time when you place an order, right? That is a data science model. So a data science team is working on a model which will predict that this is an approximate time when your order will be delivered, and they are making that code into production, right? So a live order when you are placing, right? You can see that, look, this order will take me 39 minutes or 38 minutes, and this is changing with respect to time, right? So they work on two things, right? It's not just ML modeling, but also how do you place a code into production, because that is also one of the parts which you'll have to work along, right? Now, in data, in analytics, right, what you are trying to solve is that, let's say you see a new user discount coupon on Swiggy, right, which is around, let's say, 50% off at this point of time, right? Now, help me understand, the business will sometimes come to you and help you understand why you have chosen 50%. Why not 40? Why not 60, right? So what is that optimal coupon code that you should run to get the optimal result? Now, that optimal could be based on cost cutting or could be based on getting more number of new users, right? So based on the objective, you will try to do something and you will try to come out with the right metric, right? So that is the clear difference that happens in analytics and data science, right? Analytics, you're typically trying to solve a business problem which has some analytical means of covering through basic mathematics and basic analytical thinking, basic logical thinking, right? Data science will be more into machine learning, hardcore machine learning, and placing the code into production, right? That's the difference where it comes along into companies, bigger companies that you will work along, right? And this is my understanding fairly onto it, right? If you have something to add, Ashit or Mitul, you can do add your thoughts on that.
And the one thing I want to mention on this, right? And this is again for beginners. Everyone thinks that all the projects that any industry does is all ML based, which is not correct. Okay. Like me personally, so I've been working on Decathlon since about 1.5 years now. I think I've rarely done any ML projects. So far, I've done 2 time series projects. That's because, again, if you're working with a finance team, right, you got to forecast sales, right? You got to forecast, how good the products are going to be doing, and so on and so forth, inventory and so on, right? But apart from that, all the projects that I've done, they've been solely around analytics, right? Let's say a supply team wants to know something, right? Let's say marketing teams, they want to analyze their, loyalty customers. So these sort of projects, you end up doing a lot, and you end up doing less and less of ML. So not everything is ML based, unless you're going into a company that is purely an ML based company. So I just want to mention that to beginners who spend a huge amount of their time on just learning on ML and trying to crack interviews and thinking it's all ML that I'm going to be getting asked, which is not true. If you watch videos on YouTube, like Amazon interviews or Facebook and so on, like type of questions they ask, it's not solely ML based, right? So it's a good point that you brought up, Gaurav, on that.
Yeah. Thanks, Mitul, for that. I think very nice point that Mitul just mentioned, right? So right now, right, in the industry, even when I see, right, people are just trying to build a machine learning model, right? And that's what they believe that is what their job is, right? And in the initial part that I'm seeing, it is fancy, right? But the real stuff isn't about that. The real stuff is about that problem statement that Midul is saying, right? And it could be an ML model, it could not be an ML model. It could be a very basic analytical solution that you've provided, right? Assuming a pricing strategy, assuming the optimal coupon code, right? Or how do you get some of your dormant customers which are not coming into your platform? How do you get them back, right? And you don't need a data science model for that, right? Sometimes the business requirement is at a very faster pace, right? They want to make quicker decisions, right? And generally, if you go around to data science team, hardcore machine learning team, right, they'll take a lot of time, right? Because they have to do a lot of stuff, they have to do lots of checks and places, right? It has to be in real production, right? But when you are into analytics, right, you have the liberty to try out quicker things, maybe not at a very same accuracy level as of what data science is doing, right? You might be 10% less accurate, but that is okay for the business, right? It has to be quick, and it has to be not an optimal solution, but the solution which works as of for now, and then you eventually grow, right? So projects are an iterative process. You do something, you then improve onto it, and you then eventually move on to a final production, right? So just to add on to that point also, right? So it's not just ML, it's a lot of things that eventually go into it, right? And that's how probably the things are in reality.
So like as Gaurav and Mithun rightly said, so it is more about how do you solve a problem than the tools. So what is ML? So ML is basically figuring out some rules from some data, right? And if you already have some rules that you want to apply to a problem, then you don't even need ML, right? Because what ML does is gives out some rules, right? So yeah, so that is a great point. Uh, one thing that I wanted to touch on is what do you think about doing a master's in data science? Like freshers usually ask this question because they have done their bachelor's in some other field, and now it is very difficult for a fresher to get a job in data, in any data kind of role. So do you think who do you think should go for a master's, and who do you think should not go for a master's?
Okay, so this is actually very subjective, right? I actually took up on a master's course, right, when I was in Swiggy, right? So Swiggy gave me an opportunity to do a master's from IASC, right? And it was a part-time master's course which will spread around for 3 years, right? Now, since eventually I moved out of Swiggy, I couldn't continue that course, right? But I was part of 3 semesters, right? And that was a brilliant course without any doubt, right? So if you have a very keen interest and you believe that look, doing masters from actually top notch organization will give you that deeper understanding that you need in your career to grow. Let's say you want to get into top companies, right? Maybe you can go around for that, not an issue, right? But I have seen lots and lots of masters which are being collaborated by edtech organizations, right? So I'll not name any one of those, right? Those are actually not really adding a lot of value, right? So you have to differentiate, right? If you have a very good organization which is giving you this opportunity, go for it. 1.5 to 2 years is not that difficult a time, right? But my thought process is very different, right? What I actually believe is that you should first get into analytics, right? Because getting into analytics is relatively easy, right? You need couple of things, right? You need to have some understanding of SQL, good understanding of SQL. I'll say pretty good, right? You need to know, okay, very basic functions in Excel, right? Some basic things of Python, right? Here and there, if you could understand. If even if you don't know ML, it's okay, right? No one at a beginner level is trying you to understand all the things, right? And have a very good problem solving ability, right? What do I mean by problem solving ability? The ability to think, right? That look, if I have given you a problem that let's say Swiggy's orders are going down, right? So can you help me understand what is the root cause of this, right? So I want you to think in all possible directions, right? That okay, this might be because of new users or repeat users, right? Or if I break down into different tier cities, right? Tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, where exactly the problem was, right? At the last, I might come around to okay, some external factors, pricing of petrol or Zomato or XYZ, which I can't control, right? But if I am able to think or break the problem into chunks, right, between users or between orders or between cities, and eventually say that look, because of so and so reason, this was the reason, right? This was the area where things are going. This is what organizations initially look around for, right? And getting into analytics will give you some kind of security that look, now you've got into analytics, you are doing something, right? Now you want to transition to data science, right? So you have to be lucky to get some machine learning projects, right? You will be building a lot of business understanding from that point of time, right? there I believe is a good chance that you can get into masters, or there's also a way of moving from analytics to data science, right? Organizations will eventually give you some kind of this free lever, right, where you can connect with data science in your team, right, who are working there. You can collaborate with them, right, because now you're working in organization, right? You have your liberty to connect with them, understand how projects are working, right? Create that path. You have to work on creating that path, right? You have to ask your manager that, can you assign me a mentor in data science, right? I'll work with him over some time. He'll give me 1 hour of his weekly time, right? And I'll try to work around that, right? So all of those things can happen, right? I tried doing all of those things. Something worked for me, something didn't work for me, right? And that this was a continuous process, right? So you have to try out multiple iterations of it, right? What works for you. My transition from analytics manager, why I transitioned from analytics manager to Walmart, right? So here's why I did it, right? So I was around 6.5 years of experience, right? And I felt that getting into a pure play management role initially in my career isn't very helpful for me, right? I loved it, but that probably kept me thinking that, I might forget the things that I've learned, right? I'm not doing hands-on anymore, right? And once you get a very good team, right, which eventually happens in pretty good organizations, right? There you don't really have, I felt it that I didn't have a lot to add on to it, right? Once the initial setup was done, it became very repetitive for me. So my idea was simple, that, for the next 5-6 years, I want to be hands-on, right? And as I mentioned, right, I was into an MTech course, right? So I got a very good understanding of, how things actually work in depth, right? And the transition from Walmart just happened, right? I got a call one day, and the interview process was going around, right? This was into supply chain domain, right? And it's not hardcore machine learning, as Mithul is saying, right? I have some projects of machine learning and I have some projects of analytics, right? Probably I can say at this point of time, it is 70-30, right? Maybe in future, it might be 50-50 or 80-20, I don't know, right? So the idea is simple, that you are solving a problem and not simply into data science or machine learning, right? That thought has been kept into. For me, what was important is to be hands-on for a longer period of time. That was my thought process of moving from Swiggy, right? And I spent quite a good time there. I spent around 3.5 years, right? My learning was great. I've moved into different domains, right? So I started with business, being a pure play business function, right? Doing some kind of demand planning for the team. Then I moved to pricing. Then I moved to a product. I did some role there as a product management, as an associate product manager, right? I took out building 6-7 products for the analytics team, right? So let's say you have a forecasting tool or a classification tool, right? An automated tool. So you just throw in the data, you get the output out, right? What happens with that, right? We didn't have an experimentation platform back then, right? And you are doing a lot of synthetic control experiments, right? Not just pre-post. So how can you do something that analytics team can benefit from it, right? So I had a mix of a lot of things that I've done. I moved to driver ecosystem where I was doing fraud analytics there, helping develop some real-time systems, all of that. So my learning was done with Swiggy, I felt. And that's why the transition happened. Okay, let's try something new. Let's get into a new domain of supply chain, right? You've been into e-commerce world. You've done service-based companies, right? Now the bigger brands and probably a stable organization after 6.5 years of your career, right? So that was my thought process on that.
And I want to mention, right, throughout the process, like Gaurav hasn't mentioned that he knew everything, right? It's something that he has learned over time, going in different departments, working with different people, right? Even dealing with clients. That's one of those things. A lot of people might be working as a data scientist in companies. They might not be directly dealing with the stakeholders. So to them, I would say try and find an opportunity to deal with the stakeholders. Try to face them. Me myself, like in my company, initially, I didn't know how to deal with stakeholders. I didn't know how to connect all the data science projects that I've been doing to the business. How am I creating value to the business? But eventually what I did was, I had a really good manager. I told my manager, like, hey, I want to directly deal with the end user, right? So that's when I started seeing the value that I'm providing, I'm bringing in to the business, right? So for those who are, just getting started, any data science problem that you select, try and write down some questions surrounding the business, right? What can we get out of this data that could help the business, right? So try and create scenarios, right? And for people who are already working as a data scientist, if you're not dealing with clients, try to deal with clients. But that's the only way that you're gonna, move up a ladder in your career, right? So surrounding that, let's take a question from the audience. So we have a question for a data analytics fresher's job. Is Python knowledge
No,
necessary?
let's start from the first one. So
Oh,
Dhrudeep
there's a first one.
has asked.
Oh,
So like
it's
when
not.
you transitioned from Swiggy to Walmart, so how difficult was the transition? How did you get approached with an offer or did you apply?
No, so I applied for it, right? I applied for this process, and this process took around 3.5 months, right? And I think it wasn't that difficult, I'll say, right? The transition, as I'm saying, right, it wasn't a hardcore 100% data science kind of machine learning thing, right? It was 50-50 or 70-30 at that point of time, right? So and some advantage that I got was by doing that master, right? Even though I couldn't complete it, right? The first 2 semesters, right? Whatever learning I had, right? That gave me a lot of in-depth knowledge around that, right? So that was one of the positive factors that I got, right? Second thing, it was relatively analytical, right? So the kind of problem that I'm solving at Walmart is around supply chain part, right? So think of something around this, right? That let's take an example of Flipkart, right? So an order that I place in Flipkart right now might get shipped, and let's say in one order I have 10 items, right? So all of these 10 items, it is possible that there are different warehouses where Flipkart has actually stored these items, right? So I am actually I'm making one order through these 10 items, which might be placed in some different stores, right? Or in some different warehouses, right? Now, if I'm bringing all of them together to my house, right? I might be doing, let's say, 3 deliveries or 4 deliveries, right? I might be clubbing them at some relative common store and then bringing it to me, right? Now, how do you reduce that cost, right? Eventually, at some point of time, right? What if everything was placed at a single point of time, right? All of those factors will come into play, right? Anything around supply chain, right? So at the ladder that I was trying to climb, right? I was trying to solve this type of problem, right? It was more around the business understanding, that I could develop through some assignment that I had, right? A basic supply chain assignment that I got, right? So was I able to think in all of those directions, right? Will the demand, capacity, all of those things would be solved? And that was more around that, right? It was not more around machine learning, that will you be able to apply this machine learning technique, right? That was not the idea there, right? Eventually, when you will work, you'll understand that, okay, this is what you've learned, this is what your past experience has shown, right? And you will be able to do it when it comes around, right? That's not the difficult part. The difficult part there was understanding this basic business idea, right? And when solving those business case studies, that became challenging, right, during the interviews for me, right? So it was, the first round was around SQL, and the second one and the third one was more around the case studies, right? And that is where most of the people get stuck, right? So I was probably, I'll say, I was just a little lucky enough to get through, right? I didn't had a lot of knowledge, but then yeah, it just happened, and I got that opportunity.
Yeah, so the next question that we have is from Sonia. For a data analytics fresher job, is Python knowledge necessary?
See, again, it's subjective, right? Now you have to bifurcate organizations, right? There are some organizations which will work on Python, right? And they'll give you a tag of data analyst. So there they might ask, right? But in general, if I say, right, if I take out 80% of the organizations, it is SQL which is highly common and which is the most required thing, right? And then for any analysis that you're doing, you will club it with Excel or a BI tool, right? Eventually, Python comes along where you're using for, let's say, high amount of automation of your task, right? Or probably some ML kind of stuff, right? When you bring around that machine learning layer of doing some forecasting, of doing some regression, of doing some classification, right? There the machine learning stuff comes along. So as a fresher, right, it's okay that you are not very proficient with Python. It can work, right? But again, as I'm saying, right, it depends on organization to organization. As a majority that I've seen, you can survive without knowing it, but eventually you have to learn, right? So in my first organization, when I did, right, they were using Python, right? It was in plain analytics. They were a product-based organization. They were using Python, and I had to learn it, right? When I moved from uh, Imply Analytics to Tredence, which is a very similar company as of to New Sigma, right? There, I didn't work upon Python for the first 6 months, right? I was simply using SQL, Excel, and Tableau, right? So it is subjective, right? But in majority that I've seen, SQL, Excel, and one visualization tool, right? That is a pathway to get into an organization, majority of the organization, and then you can learn parallel. You have to learn things, right? That's what you have to understand. You learn along with it, right? When I've transitioned into organizations, I've learned so many new tools, right? I was not introduced to Databricks. I got introduced to Databricks on Swiggy, right? What was DAG? I had no idea when I was working in TEDx, right? But now I know, right? When I moved to Walmart, the entire system changed. I was not using Snowflake anymore. I was now using BigQuery, right? So things will change, tools will change, right? But the basic concept remains the same. So you have to learn it along the way, and you learn it along the way. It isn't that difficult. There are so many people who are doing it. You can sometimes ask them, you can Google it, you can use ChatGPT, and you will get those answers, right? So the thought is around that part, right? So initially Python, I'll say do this, right? First, learn SQL, Excel, problem solving a bit, right? Build projects around these three things, right? And then start applying, right? When you're applying, start giving interviews, right? When you're giving those things, right? Parallelly learn the new tool, right? Parallelly learn Python. Right? This is what your strategy should be, right? It's not that I bilkul nahi, I'll not learn it all. You will learn it all, but you will have to prioritize it, right? So prioritize things that will get you a job. During that process of job or getting into job, right? Learn that new tool that you're looking around. So I'll say use that technique for that.
Right. So thanks for that nice answer. Abros has a question: how to learn the ML models?
So Abros, I want you to ask me. Probably Abros, you've connected with me on LinkedIn as well, right? So probably you can unmute yourself, right? And why you are choosing data science, right? Because I know your background. I just want you to give a background to the audience first, and then why data science? Why are you choosing data science? Why not analytics? Help us understand this part.
Hi Gaurav and everyone here. Actually, I just want to, know more about the automation flow of the work, right? Because I have been working on the analytics part a bit. So there I see that, I don't feel like, I'm solving a certain problem, or, when I'm applying for a job, I see that there is only questions, or the questions that are asked in interview is just based on do you know how to automate the flow within Excel for the same questions that you're solving. So solving a question and automating the same question to get an optimized answer through using the using the model that you have designed to solve that problem in Excel or SQL, you are applying it on a low base, right? The code of the VBA is very low. I mean, the code flow is very low, and when you go to Python, you get an extensive flow of the code. So that's only the reason why I want to understand how to, if I'm querying a solution, like maybe we take an example of Swiggy here, like we are querying a problem, like just like once we had a session, you explained about it, that five users are asking for refund of their mishandling of the food. So how do we solve it? So we collect the data of those customers, and we extract those data from the recorded data, and then we feed it into the system. So now only the thing is, I want to go into analytics, but the workflow should be there where I can, optimize the solution, not just, extract the solution or do the exploratory data analysis. So that's only the reason why I want to. Yeah.
I'll answer that. Right? So there are two, three things that you are saying, right? First, you're saying is you're doing some kind of VBA job, you're creating that, right? Now you want to, at a larger scale, if this data comes along, right? How do you automate it, right? That's one of the tasks, right? Now, in organizations, when you work, right? If you work in analytics or in data science, right? You build projects in steps, right? So the first thing is you solve a problem, right? Then you will figure out a way. How do I make it more optimized way of solving it, right? Was there a better way of doing it? And then the third steps comes around. Okay, let's make it highly automated, right? Now, no one will do this part of code anymore. No one will run this job. No one will click on the VBA. No one will query the data. Let's have an automated system, right? And in majority of the cases, you will use a scripting language for it, right? And generally it is Python, right? That I've come across. So learning is through that way, right? Now you are getting confused between analytics and automation jobs, right? In analytics and companies in which are actually doing data analytics, right? You have to first understand what is the problem. Making VBA through automating this VBA code through Python is just very basic step, right? But why are you doing that is the question, right? So what is it that your stakeholders are using this information for, right? what are they driving out of this data that they are taking some decisions, right? So once you understand this process, you will understand that it is not about VBA, it is not about Python, right? The problem was the major thing, right? And probably not this organization, but the rest of the organization that you will try, right? For that, you'll have to change a lot of things, right? Maybe what you are showing in your resume back then, right? Because of the past experience that you've done, you are getting these types of jobs, right? You
Yes.
have to change that scope. That is the first thing, right? You have to change, you have to make that scope a little wider. Uh, Otherwise, you are confusing कि, okay, automation task through Python or that ML flow is the only thing, right? That isn't, right? That is one of the parts. Automation is one of the parts which happens, right? But you can just simply learn Python, right? All the basic stuff, how do you write a function and all of that, right? And read the data through data frames and with that, right? And then you could have done that job. Same thing that you're doing from Excel VB, right?
And
You would have done the same job. You don't need a
Gaurav,
machine learning model for it.
sorry to interrupt. Also, the problem is, that when I'm trying to upskill, okay, maybe Excel or SQL or Python, I see that there is a lot of opportunity to, develop your upskilling or problem solving skills within Python, because there is a lot of range of questions, or, a lot of range of variety of features that Python has to the problem solving. So that's one reason why, when doing Excel or SQL, I do not see that, there is something that I can, implement as in for problem solving. So that comes as a very much of issue when learning SQL or Excel. So if you could.
So I'll take it this way, right, Bros? See, let's say if you have some understanding of Python, then probably you can start with Python. There's nothing wrong about it, right? But for majority of people who are coming from a non-tech background, right? Maybe for them, Python might not be as that common as it is for you, right? So it is very subjective, right? Depending on what you want to learn, right? How you want to learn, right? Why I say this, that in reality, right? 80% or 90% of organizations at the very initial level will focus upon SQL or Excel, right? Now you're saying that I am doing some project, but I can't relate it to the right business problem, right? But in Python, you can, right? And the major reason is that the projects that you are doing in Python are some kind of hardcore EDAs, right, or machine learning, right? So that is one of the reasons, right? So you pick up an exploratory analysis of cricket data and all of those, and you eventually say that, look, this is what I've done, right? The idea here is that you could do the same thing in SQL plus Excel also, right? You've got all the data from SQL and did all of those slice and dice of data into different cuts, right? And presented that information in Excel. Both are okay, right? If you can learn Python, do it that way. If you can learn SQL and Excel, do it that way. It really doesn't matter, right? But what I'll suggest is pick SQL and Excel first, right? Because in majority of the interviews that you will see, right, you will be asked a lot of SQL, right? Because that is what they will give you, right? You will get the data in a database, right? And you have to write a query. So you can't get away with SQL anymore, right? So you have to learn it for the case of solving a problem there, right? How do you pick the data is the first thing, right? So that is SQL for me, right? So my suggestion still remains the same, that focus on that, right? You can start with Python, no issues, right? But once you've learned Python, move back to SQL and move back to Excel, right? The way we discussed, right? You have to learn some things, and then only you can move forward.
So
Thank
one
you.
thing I want to mention, or rather share with you, right? So this is something we do, right? We provide training in data science. I wasn't going to bring this up, but the question, made me to talk about this. So, you can pick a single data set. Let's say, even if it's clean, go on Kaggle, pick a data set, make it messy yourself, right? And then try and use all of these different tools that you're talking about. Let's say you want to get experience with SQL, put SQL in it. Let's say you want to get experience with R or Python. Somehow, try and make use of these different tools on a single data set and connect the points, right? Now, why SQL is so mandatory? Because everything lives in databases, right? So there's no way that you can bypass that. So if you want to do any kind of analytics or, just a simple extraction of data, yes, it's doable in Python, but the first preference that people would prefer is SQL, right? Because again, SQL has been around for a really long time, way before Python, right? And it's never going away, right? So SQL is one of those skills, I initially, when I was trying to get into data science, SQL was like, it's easy, right? There's not much to learn. But then I saw the value of SQL when I actually got into industry. And now I spend probably 70% of my time just writing SQL queries. And everything that you want to do in Python can be doable using SQL. Obviously, things get complicated. You can't do machine learning in SQL. But again, let's not get there. Just talking about simple analytics, right? So anything that you could do in Python or R, you can actually do it in SQL. So try to replicate it in different tools. So that's how you can, add values and add and gain skill sets that you're looking for, and then showcase it, right? Simple as that. So just want to, so if Gaurav is a man, I just want to share this with you, right? So this is something that, we train our students with, right? So we created this entire architecture where, students would come along. And again, like I said, we go and pick simple data sets from Kaggle and we make it messy. Like we make it hell messy because they are so clean and that doesn't replicate the real world scenario. So make it messy and then try and connect different tools. So in this case, we have so many different tools here. We have SQL, we have Python, there's some MLflow as well. Then we have some cloud services, AWS or GCP, right? For automation, we have Jenkins. And again, the most important and valuable skill on the technical side is programming. How can you be a better programmer, right? Think long-term. Anything that you write, think from the mindset of software engineers. They always think about anything that build in terms of products, a product that's going to last longer, right? So having that mindset will take you a really long way, right? So that's the one thing that I wanted to add on that.
Just for a small clarification, when Mitul says we, it's Mitul and Ashit, right? It's not me.
Yeah. So yeah, this is something that I didn't really talk about it, but this is something data science training that me and Ashit provide. Something that we see a huge gap between bootcamps and people trying to get jobs, right? So we'll talk about that afterwards if people are interested. So because we have a lot of questions to cover.
So about the ML in SQL thing, I think people have now started coding like small simple algorithms like linear regression in SQL also.
Yeah,
I know A/B test people are doing in SQL because I was trying that. Right.
So along the same line, so we have some SQL questions as well. From Nitin, we have what is the difficulty level of the questions asked in SQL interviews?
One more question, Ashit. It's from Anshul Tiwari. So I have 3 years of work experience in analytics and e-commerce domain. I'm looking for a change right now, but I'm not getting an opportunity to 90 days on this period. So, okay, Anshul, so there could be this thing that you mentioned, right? So you have a 90 days notice period, and that is one of the problems, right? So it's not about the skills, right? So what is the problem because that you lack something, you're not getting interview calls, right? Or is it because that your notice period is so high that you are getting interview calls and people are not really excited enough to take you for the next role, right? What is the problem? That you have to understand, right? If you're not even getting calls, then probably you have to take 2 steps back, check your resume, right? Check what you've mentioned in your resume. Is it really strong enough to get you calls, right? That is one part, right? And then how do you tackle this 90-day notice period problem, right? So a lot of people have this, right? And it is predominantly very common across industries, right? So that's a very separate problem that you'll have to deal with, right? You'll have to find organizations where you can ignore this 90-day notice period as of for now, right? Focus them that, okay, I'll I can pretty quickly I can join it, right? I'm not saying you have to lie it, but you can ignore this part as of for now, right? And try to get an interview call, right? And if you're really good enough, right, organizations, I believe that are okay to get very strong people into their organization, right? They can still wait on to 60, 90 days, right? That's okay, right? Also, it's on a riskier side, right, which I'll not recommend, but sometimes people do put down their papers, right, and they start their job hunting in between that, right? So their notice period are going down and they eventually try to get a job, which is something which I say that given this current market scenario, you can avoid it, right? You can skip that part. Probably that shouldn't be okay. So you have to understand, right, what is the missing link, Anshul. Hopefully I'm able to answer that question.
I think it is the notice period thing is more about how much leverage do you have. So like I also had 90 days notice period in my previous organization, and I still do. So but since I had some leverage, so they were willing to get me at any cost, and they were even willing to buy out the notice period for me. So keep a lookout for that. if you are valuable enough for the next company, then you can even ask them to buy out the notice period.
Yeah, I think this is what
Another thing I wanna bring it up is, again, I'm not sure if this happens in India, right? It happens a lot here. It's the title of the job. Okay, so a lot of people, I started out as a data analyst, but the work that I was doing was of data scientist, right? And I've got friends who work as data analysts, but the work that they're doing is actually of data scientists. So there's this still, no correct way, like, how do you put it? So companies still, don't give a right title and the responsibilities, right? So again, if you're working as a data analyst, but if you feel like the stuff that you're actually doing is of data scientist, try and show it, right? If a recruiter, a recruiter might not know the distinction between a data analyst, a data scientist, and responsibilities and so on, right? So when they interview you, try and tell them, like, hey, even though I have this title of data analyst, the work I'm actually doing is this, right? Which actually aligns with what you're looking for, for a data scientist role. So I just wanted to, throw that out there. Again, I'm not entirely sure if this happens a lot in India. At least in abroad, it happens. So Gaurav or Rashid can, talk about that more.
Not as prevalent, but yes, it exists. So Ruchi has a question.
I'm not very clear with the first part of your question, right? What you've really mentioned. Probably you can unmute. How can we make our way into analytics? Okay, that I'll answer. But the first part, probably you can give me a little more clarification what you're trying to ask. So you are from, if I understand it, you are from a non-tech background, right? Non-engineering background, and you want to transition to data analytics, right? And how can you do that, right? So three things, as simple as that, right? You have to learn some tools which are required, and then you have to understand how do you build a problem solving ability, right? That is around guess estimates, right? Probably I'll share some sites also, right? So having a strong understanding of guess estimates, right? And then able to think in all possible direction, right? So a problem that we discussed, right? How do you say that, okay, Swiggy's orders are going down, right? How do you build an RC onto it, right? That's a very common question in interview that you will face, right? Or Flipkart's order is going down, right? One RCA question, right? Or how many airplanes or how many Uber cars are currently floating in Bangalore, right? Can you help me give an estimate to that question, right? So those are problem solving questions. And then there are tools, right? Tools are SQL, Excel, Python, one BI tool, right? Power BI or Tableau, right? So how I say you should learn is pick out Excel, SQL first, right? Learn things, right? On my LinkedIn page, right? I've shared which topics you should cover. You shouldn't learn everything, right? You should pick out those limited topics, right? And start learning SQL there, right? Start learning Excel from there, right? Those topics only, right? 80% of things which will solve the majority of your problem, right? You don't need to learn everything, right? That is the first step. Second step is once I'm done with this, right? I need to build my projects, right? So how do I pick up a project? You can pick up any random data set. Let's say I'm very much interested in politics, right? So there is one data that is floated by an organization which says this is the amount of uh, donation that these parties have received, and this is the amount of donation, and all of these parties will have some candidates which will have some criminal cases, XYZ cases, right? So I, with this data, can create some of my hypothesis. I can come out with some insight and some actionables, right? So this actionable could be to a government agency or could be to some XYZ organization, right? Look, that I am seeing that there are 50% of criminal cases which are filed onto these politicians. They are running it, right? So why not we come up with some policy where this number gets reduced, right? We want to change this part, right? So project could be anything. It could be a machine learning project. It could be a very basic understanding of what you've learned, right? It could be around movies, right? So something that I did, right? So there were a list of Pixar movies, right? So how do you analyze it? You can analyze it from the past 8-10 years of their releases, right? Whatever they've done, right? How they've grown, right? What is the percentage change that they are going, right? What is the next topic that they could come around with that, right? So project is what will get showcased in your resume, right? So you learn tools, you learn how the art of problem solving is, you create a very good resume which showcases that you've learned the tool, right? So project will add that value that now Ruchi knows the thing, right? Ruchi has an understanding of how SQL works, how Python works, how Excel works, and she has presented that information through a project. You add that link of that project, right? So let's say I have done a project in my local Python, right? I can probably share this, right? I can probably share this out in a WordPress doc, in a WordPress blog, right? I've written a WordPress blog. It not just be on LinkedIn, right? Online presence can be there on a Tableau public dashboard link, right? Or on your WordPress link or on your LinkedIn, anything that works, right? But that link will give me an edge when I'm selecting a candidate in my shortlisting process, right? So when I was an analytics manager, all I would see is hundreds of resume, right? So how do I select Ruchi from 1,000 more, right? It is your resume, it is your product, right? So your product has to be very niche. Just think about it, right? Your resume is what comes to me, right? I have thousands of resumes, right? How do I say that Ruchi is better than XYZ person? Because of what I see through her projects, right? That is important, right? So add your projects which defines that, look, I did an experimentation for understanding which is the most optimal coupon discount which Swiggy should run, right? That experiment helped in improving, right, this metric, right? What was this metric? Let's say from 50% you reduce the coupon discount to 40%, right? So ideally there will be two things. One, maybe some of the new users will not get into the system, right? So earlier I was getting 1,000 users with 50% off. Now because I have reduced the coupon, there is a high chance that lesser number of people will get onboarded. So that is a guardrail metric, right? What is the uplift metric? The cost, right? So now earlier I was spending 1 lakh rupees on my new users coupon, right? That was my marketing budget, right? Now I have saved some of that budget, right? Now I'm just spending 80,000, let's say. So I'm saving 20,000, right? So it is a business decision which eventually the business will take whether they want to go ahead with this decision or not, right? But this whole idea of project tells you that you are optimizing something. You are optimizing this 40%, 50%, 60% coupon discount, right? Based on some metric, right? Let's say the cost metric or the new user metric, right? And eventually telling a story that, look, through this project, this is what I've done. This is what we recommended. And the recommendation has some actionable insight, right? And it could be any project. It could be a movie data set. It could be a cricket data set. It could be anything. What as a manager I was interested in is whether you are covering the whole story or not, right? That is what you have to think about it, right? Once you think in that direction, once your project is showcased in your resume, right, that will start giving you calls, right? And eventually then it comes around how do you crack an interview, right? So same thing, right? So that is my suggestion for all of you, right? Work in this direction, right? If you are getting into analytics, it's not about data science, it's not about machine learning, it's about very few basic things, right? SQL, Excel to get started off. Learn one visualization tool, let's say Python, Power BI, right? Build projects, right? Have a very good resume, right? And then start giving interviews, right? So let's say first you're not getting an interview call, right? You're trying, but you're not getting an interview call. That is a hint that your resume is not good, right? Or the project that you've mentioned are not good. Change it, right? Connect with people who are in industry. Ask them what I'm doing wrong, what is the mistake, right? They will give you a very good edge, right? Join some courses if you feel that that will help you, right? I'm not against anything of that, right? But you have to understand that there is something that you are missing why you're not getting calls, because the market is opening up. I'm seeing multiple job openings everywhere, right? So this is the process you have to adopt, right? Learn things, build a resume, start applying, and then improve from iterations. The first time you will build your resume, it will suck, right? Give it 2 more weeks and you will find it that it is improved now, right? That is how this iterative process has to work, right? When you will give now interviews, when your resume is good, you're getting a call, right? You stuck at interviews, you struggle with SQL query, right? Then you will have to understand, okay, this is how you have to pitch it, right? Someone will grill you around your project and you will not be able to answer, right? So now you come prepared with that project answer, that this is what I'm covering, right? Someone would have asked you, why didn't you do this thing, right? So now you have this answer, right? So this approach has to be iterative, this approach has to be continuous, right? And that is the only way of moving forward, right? My first company when I cracked, right? So I didn't get into Mu Sigma, right? It took me around 90, 80 interviews. I don't even know, right? 90, 80 companies would not even select me. 10 interviews I would have given, I was not getting into the first round, right? And then I was just lucky enough, right? Because I learned from those 10 things, right? So you will fail a lot, right? Just be ready for failing and just start as soon as possible, right? Don't wait for that perfect moment. Okay, unless I learn everything, I will not do it, right? I will not start giving interviews. That is one of the common mistakes. Avoid that, right? Learn the basics, right? Pick it up and start giving for the interviews, right? You don't need to be pretty good with Python. You don't need to be very good with Excel, right? Or Power BI, that you need to know everything about the DAX, right? You just don't need to. Organizations only look around two things, right? If I take example of Swiggy, all the e-commerce companies, right? Flipkart, Amazon, every company that you'll pick up, you go through their JDs of business analytics person, like not data analyst, right? Not an MIS analyst. They simply ask that you have to be very good with SQL and you have to be a very good problem solver, right? Once you have these two things, they understand that, look, I can train them on Python, I can train them on any other tool, right? If Databricks come, these folks will learn it, right? Because they have learned one tool. All they need to do is, right, left join in SQL is same as a merge function in Python, right? It's nothing different. So you learn it along the way, right? You can write the same code in Databricks also, right? So tools, you learn it, right? But the problem solving ability is something which is a major missing part, right? And that my suggestion is, right, connecting with industry folks who have worked, right? That will give you an edge, right? When I tell you about, okay, how I solved problems in Swiggy, right? How I solved problems in Walmart, right? When Ashit tells you how he did things in his IDFC bank, right? Or something about Decathlon, and Mithil will tell you. You will get to understand how real things work, right? And this is the real thing, is where the difference is, right? So connecting those missing dots is one of the edge factors which you will learn, right? But before that, you have to pick things on your own, right? You have to pick out things from your own. You have to pick out SQL, Python, Excel, whatever we've talked about, right? And that process has to be iterative. Fix one thing, learn one thing, move to the next part. Again, jump onto the next part, right? Then give interviews, then learn Python, right? Build a roadmap for yourself. Whatever is good for you, take that part and then move to the next part, right? That's how I would have approached it if I was into your shoes.
I think just to summarize for the first part of the question, so if you think you are not equal to an engineering candidate, so that is only because the hiring manager has some doubts on your technical ability, and you can only bridge that doubt by actually showcasing some work experience in that. So if you, as Gaurav rightly said, if you are already done some projects, so that will anyways bridge that gap.
Yeah, and one more part, right? Sorry, I missed that part, right? So when I've hired, right, I've never looked into whether you are from computer science background or you are from non-computer science background, right? In your resume, what I look at the first thing is, what were your projects? If you worked in a company, right? If I worked in Tredence, I will be interested in seeing what I've done in Tredence, right? Now, if you've not worked anywhere, right, then it is your own project that you've done, right? That is the most interesting part that I'm interested in, not your grades, right? Not your college grades, not your 12th grade, right? And neither your any other thing, right? But the project, right? Because from that project, I'll understand whether you actually learn things, or you're just doing some random stuff, right? That is the differentiating factor, right? So that's just the one more part that I wanted to understand, right? To help you understand, right? It's not about grades, right? I see everything in the resume. The first thing I see is your grades, college grades, then your 12th and 10th, right? This isn't important. The first thing that is important to me as a hiring manager is your projects, right? Because that helps me understand whether you really know things or not, right? The tech stack that you've used, probably that will give me more edge. Okay, now Ruchi knows about SQL, she knows about Databricks, she knows about Tableau, Power BI, right? That's an edge information that you're providing. So think around that part.
So I just want to tell you guys an interesting story, okay? So this is what happened with me a couple of months ago. So I did an interview with this oil and gas company, and on my resume, I put in this interesting project, which was related to my personal life. It had nothing to do with picking out data from anywhere. All I did was I applied analytics to my bank statements. So imagine you have 3 to 4 different bank cards. Every single month, you get statements. Now, I was tired of extracting those statements and manually looking at, okay, how much did I spend on, let's say, a car insurance? How much did I spend on gym? How much did I spend on shopping and all that stuff, right? So what I did was, I'm a data scientist, right? I know tools. So I did some analytics, right? And I created a dashboard. And then through that, I send out reports to myself where I aggregate the results. Okay, this is how much I've spent in total on shopping, right? Through this credit card. And this is how much I've spent on shopping through that credit card and all that stuff, right? So now I don't have to pull out the statements, manually calculate every single thing, right? And this project, I actually pitched it, right, to the recruiter. And the recruiter was really impressed. So again, try and find projects in your real life too, right? Try and simplify your life. You don't have to go and look for anywhere else, right? So that, and then next question.
What's the different
So I
level
think-
of interview for SQL, right? This is from Nitin.
So we are
So-
out of time, but would you mind, Gaurav, sticking around for another?
Yeah, let's take questions, and probably since the crowd has joined us. So Nitin, Right, I'll say this, right, I have posted a lot of questions, right, on my LinkedIn page, right. It is there on my favorite list, right. Probably you can go check out there. I'll place my link there, and that question is already covered, right. So I don't think so there's a lot of time we can spend on this part, but one thing that I'll add, right. There are three things which are very important, right, that will be asked for sure in interviews, in SQL interviews, right. Joins, right. In joins, what you need to understand is left join, self join, right, cross join questions, all of those things, and inner join, right. Understanding of those things are very important, and then Windows function. That's it. Those are the two most important. Joins and Windows functions will be there in your interviews for sure, 99% of the time, right. And the more you understand better about Windows function, right? How do you use lead? How do you use lag? All of those things, right? Uh, Aggregate Windows function, right? Sum over, partition by, all of those things. That is important, right? That all you need to understand. I have posted lots of questions of what these organization ask, right? You can go through that. Maybe that will help you. Cool. Uh, Next one is, do we use advanced SQL, advanced Excel industry for data analysis and for interviews? Do we need to prepare? And for interviews, we need to prepare for the same. See, again, I think we've discussed it, right? SQL is important. It will be used, right? When I say advanced SQL, right? Uh, all I'm saying is learn about Windows function, joins at a very good scale. I have mentioned what should you start with on learning SQL, right? Go through those projects, right? You will understand, okay, these are the topics that I really need to focus upon, right? I don't need to learn everything, right? Just focus on those important concepts, right? And build a very strong understanding about how do you use these three, four things, right? And then there are a lot of websites where you can practice it, right? So there is something called as Data Lemmo, there's something called as SQL Zoo, HackerRank, all of those, right? Start practicing, start applying your knowledge, whether you are able to do it or not, right? And that is the only way of moving forward, right? There's no other way. Getting internships for freshers is easy. How to get real-time experience for people who are looking for a career transition? Landing a job is the only option, or do we have any such things to explore? See, again, so real experience, right now, nowadays, right, there are so many people who are giving trainings, who are giving one-on-one mentorships, and lot of things are happening, right. So you can connect with such folks, right, who have real industry experience, right. Pick out folks who have worked in actual companies, who can share you some of their understanding and knowledge as to how they solved a problem. That will give you some idea, right. So if you have an interview at Swiggy, right, you can probably connect with people who worked in Swiggy, right, into the analytics department, right. It could be through TopMate, it could be through Preplage, it could be through general LinkedIn messaging, right? That is one way, right? That will give you an edge, right? So build a strong network in your LinkedIn profile, right? Connect with these people, help them understand if they can give you time. Generally, they don't have time, right? Because they also have their work, right? So sites like TopMate, Preplace are now coming up, right? They might give you some edge where you can directly connect with them. I think we've already covered it, right? What resources and upcoming placement that you should cover up, right? There are same things, right? Just check my LinkedIn site, LinkedIn page, and you'll find so many resources that I've mentioned.
One thing, I've put in a link to a form in the chat, which you can fill out to get the refund.
Yeah, do fill that out, right? So you will get the 99 rupees that you placed in, you will get it back from Ashit. And is DSA necessary for some job ID? So DSA actually for analytics, right? It is not needed. Data structures and algorithm is not needed to get into analytics, right? Now, when you say data science, right? Now, since you are seeing that you have to place the code in production as well, right? There it becomes a little important. Some kind of an importance is given to it, right? So you have to have that understanding, right? So for analytics, no, the answer is clear. No, you don't really need to understand anything of it, right? You can skip that part completely. What is your perspective on chat GPT, right? So here's what I'll say, right? So I connect with so many people from different industries, right? Organizations are actually adopting it, right? Cred has integrated chat GPT in their platform, right? So now think about it, right? And I've connected with so many analytics professionals there, and everyone is saying that it is giving them a lot of edge, right? A lot of edge in doing real things at a faster pace, right? What I see, the way I see things is that a lot of MIS analysts, a lot of reporting jobs, right? They will face a lot of heat, right? Because now, if there were 4 people who were doing this job, right? Maybe in future, right? The business professional themselves will simply write a simple English language in Chat GPT or that particular tool, right? And they'll get that data straight out, right? So you have to understand the differentiation factor, right? If you are a problem solver, you will always find a space, and no amount of tool, how good it is, right? That will not be able to replace you. But those jobs which can be automated, right? Just the simple data pulling jobs, right? Where business was earlier dependent on you, right? They will not be any more dependent on you, right? So those kind of things might become complex, right? And when I was in Swiggy, right, I had already seen it, right? Before ChatGPT, they were trying to build a tool, right, for the business where they simply write plain English language in the command prompt, right, and they'll get the database out, right? So organizations are already working into it, right? They want their business stakeholders to actually get the data on their own, right? They don't need to really look into someone that look get me this data out, right? Which happens a lot right now. So those type of things will happen, right? So if you are into MIS analyst roles, right, you really need to upskill. And I'm not scaring you, but I'm just showcasing what the reality might turn out to be in the next couple of years, right? It won't get eradicated, right? It won't. The jobs won't get reduced. The jobs will get reduced, right? But there won't be something कि पूरी तरह से खत्म हो गया, वैसा नहीं होगा, ठीक है? I just want to ask, will I get the opportunity to enter into field after 7 years of teaching experience in physics? Now I'm trying to come. Again, so if you've had any experience, right, 7 years of experience in teaching, let's say physics, now you want to transition into data analytics, right? Again, the same process for you, right? Nothing different, right? Learn the same tools, build the same understanding of problem solving, start applying, right? No one is interested in the career gaps, right? We've hired people who've had career gaps and they've done exceedingly well, right? And the reason is they've had an utmost desire to learn and grow, right? So if you have that thing, you will get succeeded, right? My senior manager in Swiggy, she was preparing for UPSC for almost 4 years. She didn't get through, right? She tried her hands in analytics, and I'll tell you about her, right? She was the first person who I've seen growing at an exceedingly fast pace. Almost every year she got a promotion, right? So it really doesn't matter, right? Your past is not important in analytics, right? Or in even product management, right? Those are the two fields which you can enter pretty easily. Data science becomes niche, right? That is why I see that, look, you have to understand what difference is in data science and in India, right? If you see companies like Swiggy, Walmart, Microsoft, they will differentiate between business analyst, reporting analyst, and data scientist, right? Data scientist becomes very niche. It becomes difficult to enter, right? You can enter through analytics, learn your way through, right? Move into data science, right? That is the differentiating factor, I believe, is something which you should understand before jumping into any of the conclusion that you have. How would you suggest to build your business domain knowledge? Case studies, right? I've said it multiple times. Case studies will give you a lot of edge, right? And there are companies, right, who've presented their case studies in their websites, right? Take, for example, Mu Sigma, any of the big names, right? All of these companies have their blog sites. They have all mentioned what problem they've solved, right? Start going through it, right? Then there are some channels, right? So there's a channel called as from IIM, Ahmedabad, Lucknow, Calcutta, right? All of these channels have some college representatives channels that come along, right? And they do solve real case studies, guess estimates question, right? You can probably go through their channels, start learning it, right? So you will develop how things work, right? That is my focus.
So one of the good ones, I just wanted to throw it out there. You can go check it out. Is again, if you're looking for technical ones, Cars 24. So Cars 24, they write a really good blogs on their, everything, MLOps, technical stuff. So go check it out there.
Even Swiggy, Zomato, Cred,
yeah, everyone.
Airbnb, everyone has blogs.
On experimentation, you will find a lot on Netflix, right? Netflix and Uber, they have huge amount of good articles on experimentation. You can read that, right? So you'll understand, okay, how real things have worked out, right? You will build that idea. Even one more YouTube channel that I found really good in business is around Think. I'm just not getting it, right? There's something called as something around it. Probably I'll get a name and I'll have your email ID. Right? I'll probably shoot an email to you. Whatever articles I've mentioned, whatever sites I've mentioned, I'll probably share that information to all of you. Okay, you have good idea of SQL, Excel, and I feel that I'm getting stuck with repetitive work. Could you provide me? Okay, so this is a very common problem, right? So what he's saying is he's now getting a very kind of repetitive work, right? In analytics industry, that happens a lot, right? In my previous organization, when I was in Credence, right, I felt the same, right? I had limited idea as to how the business is eventually making decision of the work that I'm doing, right? So my thing was very simple, right? When I felt that this is becoming more and more common, right, and there's nothing that I'm gaining out of it, right? Once I've learned the tools, once I've learned the techniques, right, The idea was to move to a company where I am also the consumer of that product, right? And why was that important? Why was that decision important? Is that that gave me an idea of how the business decision actually works, right? So this is what I'll say, right? Try to transition to a company where you become the consumer lens also. You start seeing things from the consumer perspective, right? The first principle thinking, right? That idea will give you a lot of understanding of how things are working, and it will open a lot of doors for you, right? Not just limited to analytics, right? Be it data science, be it product management, right? Or be it moving into strategy roles, right? All of these three roles will get opened for you, which eventually doesn't get opened in various organizations which are pure play service based or that kind of job opportunities, right? So that is something that you can try, right? And again, right, you have to crack interview at some point of time, right? So for that resume and the thing that we mentioned, right, SQL and a very good sound problem solving ability, right? That's what it is. Okay, any think school, yeah, right. Think school. That was the okay again. So my queries around MIS and different analytics. I recently got a job as data analyst, and my daily task for now is just generating reports and publishing them on SaaS work. Focus more on automation. How I can utilize the work. Okay, so this is a very common question. Okay, Nikhil Bhatt, right? So Nikhil, this is what happens, right? Now let's say you've moved into analytics, but that is kind of a reporting job, right? You are just building report. You don't have a clarity as to how things are eventually getting consumed, but you are doing it, right? So you've cleared step one, you've got into the industry, right? Now you need to get into step two, right? So you will become very strong. Probably now you know SQL a bit, right? You know Excel a bit, you know some other tools also. Become highly proficient into SQL, right? Same thing, Windows function joins. You need to be the master of it, right? That is one aspect that you need to do. Second aspect is now being very strong problem solver, right? Start sitting with your business folks, right? Or your seniors, right? And help them understand how are they consuming your information, right? How are they consuming your reports, right? Start building a very good sense of understanding that look, this is what they are doing, this is how they are driving business, and then change your project portfolio, right? So now you're just not building report, you are also understanding what was the problem statement and how this eventually your data set that you've done, right? On top of it, probably they would have done something more, right? Try to understand that gap, right? And start enhancing that learning, right? That is how you'll understand, okay, how this is how real things are working, right? And then eventually move on to that role to product companies or to a service based company, right? So I'll take one step. I've now learned this. Let's say I move to Fractal, New Sigma, or Tredence, right? Because I already know tools, right? These companies can hire me. Once I move to these companies, now I've learned some business, right? Let's move to another company, right? Let's make a switch to product company, right? So you have to strategize exactly how you have to move forward and how do you have to succeed on that route, right? That is what happens. I see this very common problem amongst all MIS analysts, right? Your role is not to just now, if things are not working, don't jump onto a data science course, right? Data science will not help you, right? Where you are missing is you don't understand how real problems are, right? All you're doing is pulling data, giving a report, right? Bridge that gap, right? What was the problem statement, right? Why are you building this report? How is the business consuming this data, right? And then how are they driving decisions, right? You need to get three answers from your stakeholders, from your managers, right? And then you try to do the same thing, right? You say, okay, now I'll think from the business understanding, right? If this is the problem, this is what they are doing, this is how the metric is changing, right? So I'm bridging that gap, right? And add this thing in your project, right? So now when I look around it, right, when this resume comes to me, I am not seeing you as a reporting analyst anymore. I am seeing that there's a huge curiosity among this individual who wants to transition from reporting analyst to a business analyst professional, right? And he's already learned things on the way. He's learning things on the way, right? That change has to be done from you, right? So that's my suggestion for you. DSA question done, 7 years of teaching done. How would you suggest to build your business domain knowledge? I think we've discussed here. Having a mentor and you. So data scientist, definitely I believe you should have a mentor, no doubt about it. Why I'm saying it, it is a highly niche skill, right? And if your aim is to be a data scientist, I would definitely suggest that pick some industry mentor, right? There are many, right? Ashit and Mitul are also doing something, right? And they are pretty good at what they do, right? You can choose them, right? You can learn from YouTube, right? You can learn from anywhere you want, right? I'm not publicizing anything, right? But having the real mentor, right, who worked in the industry will give you a lot of edge, right? They will tell you how things actually work, right? And that is the missing link, right? But one thing that I'll say is, right, if you are from a completely non-tech background, right, think about it whether you want to transition to data science or not, right? Because when things are very niche, right, and also I'll say one more thing, right? I have 80 jobs of analytics, I have 10 jobs of data science, right? That is how the industry is placed, right? When I go into Swiggy has almost 120 analytics professional, right? It has almost 30 data science professional. The applied research scientists are only 10, right? So you see that proportion, right? That is changing, right? So you have to understand, okay, bhai, which is where I can actually get into first and easier, right? It is not about passion, right? I had a huge passion for data science, right? I eventually got into data science after 5 or 6 years of my career, right? So there is one thing called as passion, there is one thing called as reality, and there's one thing called as how do I get a job first, right? Where do I get a job first, right? And you can transition from anywhere, right? You can transition directly to data science also. People do that. You can transition from analytics to data science. You can transition from analytics to product or analytics to strategy roles. Everything is possible, right? You have to decide what you want to do for your career, right? If you are okay with giving almost 9 months for data science course, get a very good hang around for good training, and then start doing your project, try that, right? No issues with that. My suggestion is always pick a skill which can land you a job first, right? Because that real job will give you a lot of real understanding, right? You'll meet a lot of folks, right? You'll do a lot of real world projects, right? Those real world things is far better than any training. Any training. If I start a training, I'll say the same thing, right? This will be way better than the real training, right? Now, parallelly get along to some mentor in data science, right? Now you have a mentor who's mentoring you. Look, this is how you can transition to data science. That will, now you will have two things, right? You know basics of a lot of things. You have real person who's telling you the real stuff, and that gives you a path. Okay, this is what the path is for me to transition from analytics to data science. That is my way of thinking, right? That is how I'll suggest you try doing things. Okay, from Somdeep Karmakar. Can Gaurav share some insights on how he solved some business problems on Walmart? What's the problem? Okay, so Walmart, I'll say I'll pick out one case, right? Problem statement, right? So let's assume what we are discussing, right? Probably we'll take a case of Flipkart. Same thing on Walmart, right? So if an item, right, if an order has 10 items and it is getting shipped from 10 different locations, right, at this point of time, right, there has to be something to be done with respect to the placement of my items in the different warehouses that we have. This is one of the business problems that they have, right? And they want to reduce some metric, right? What is that metric? Let's say packaging per order, right? So in one order, if I have 10 items and all are coming from 10 different locations, there will be 10 packages which will get delivered to me, right? So 10 packages are being delivered to me, and they are coming at a cost, right? So I need to reduce that cost down, right? So one way of doing is if in 10 packages I can reduce those packages per order from 10 to 5, right? How can I do that? I can change the way placement is being done right now, right? So if there are 10 different warehouses, 10 different items being placed there, let's say that I will place all of these 10 items into 5 stores only, right? So that my packaging per order is getting reduced, right? That is a very overview of what we can do, right? And then a lot of layers will come along with it, right? So here is one example of how you can actually solve with that factor on packaging per order, right? Just one metric, right? And that will give a lot of cost reduction to organizations like Flipkart, Walmart, etc., right? And when this happens, right, eventually, right, you will understand, okay, now this cost benefit that you are getting, right, eventually you can give this cost back to the customer by giving it at an exceedingly low cost, right? That's what organizations say, right? You pick out demand. Why is it so low? Because they have reduced all of those supply chain concepts and giving all of this cost benefit back to the customer, right? That is what you're trying to do there also, right? So that is probably one example that you can do. It was a hypothesis of business and customers placing orders in multiple cities or having more orders than a single city order. So the first thing, right? I think Shubham. So there was a problem statement that was given to you, a hypothesis, right, of some business, right? And you are jumping onto the SQL part, right? So this is how you should do, right? Take 2 steps back. The problem statement that they've given is not complete, right? First, understand what the problem statement is, right? before understanding the problem statement, if you are jumping onto some SQL or some data fetching part, right, you are not doing the justification. What they want you to think is, first understand if this is the problem statement I have given you, like, right, let's say some of the orders are not getting, the orders in Bangalore is getting reduced, right? This is the problem statement. So which orders I'm talking about, right? Let's say I'm talking about Swiggy, right? So Swiggy has multiple things. Swiggy has food orders, Swiggy has Instamart orders, Swiggy has Genie, Swiggy has XYZ thing. The first thing is, what is the person actually talking about? You have to get a clarification, right? Understand the problem. Is it about Swiggy orders or the whole platform orders, right? Now he mentions it is about Swiggy orders, right? Okay, so now I'll focus only on Swiggy orders, right? I'll not focus on Instamart and not focus on any other thing, right? Then when I know, okay, this is about Swiggy orders, what the Swiggy line of business is actually about. It is about customers, it is about delivery partners, it is about your restaurant chain that you showcase on your app. So these are the three things, right? And the eventual product, right? Any of the three or the four pillars that you have goes wrong, everything will go wrong, right? So pick one pillar, right? Start breaking it down and start coming on to solving that problem. This is how you'll have to approach it, right? This is how you'll have to think it out. Understand the problem, get clarity on the problem statement, right? Once you get that clarity, break that problem into four or three pillars that you have, right? Basic pillars which are driving the business, right? Break your orders, break your customers, break your product thing, right? There could be some issue with the product, right? You've done some changes in the payment app, right? Or that is not working. The payment page is getting flawed, right? Or repeat customers are not doing the same amount of transaction that they were doing, right? Or your delivery partners, there was some change in the payment scale, right, in Bangalore, right, and they are on a mass scale, uh, some kind of hartal or something, right? That could have happened. I don't know, right? So I'll pick one thing. I'll start deep diving into it. I'll be engaging with the interviewer continuously and understanding whether I'm doing it right or not. Is there a different way of thinking? And that is how I'll get moved to the next part of this statement. Okay, I think probably.
I think the questions are going to keep coming.
Yeah, I think this is just keep on coming, right? But again, the same part, right? Which course is to be done, which course is not to be done. I have a very simple thought, right? If you really want to succeed, have mentors. It is important, right? But no mentor can get you a job, right? Unless you understand how to do things on your own, right? This is what you have to understand, right? This is the first thing that you have to build, right? Everything is available freely on YouTube, right? But still we are not willing to do it, right? So change that mindset, right? Mentors will help you in giving a very structured process, right? They will reduce your time, right? So if you were doing things in 3 months, they will probably help you do it in 1 month, right? That is important, right? But if you don't start, right, you will never succeed. That is my only thought process that you have to build, right? Change this thought process that there is someone who has a magic pill, and if I join this course, I will get a job. It just doesn't happen, right? Organizations which claim that someone has got a job in Google, Microsoft, those number is less than 1%, right? In terms of experimentation, it is statistically insignificant, right? So if you join that organization, you are still very likely that you will not get selected, right? So so your thought process should be that how to build a learning from my own, right? And whenever I get stuck, I have some mentors or some organization, right? It could be a personal mentor, it could be an organization, but those will help me understand how real things are working, right? I will tell you how things work in Walmart, how things work in Decathlon, how things work in IDFC Bank, right? And those thoughts, right, that you have to think, right? And when you start thinking in that direction, you'll understand, okay, this is what real thing is, this is where the money is, right? So I have to move from a reporting job to business analyst job, then to probably product, or then to probably data science, right? So that thought process has to be developed, right? The only reason why you should join mentors is to get this thing, right? If you are joining mentors and still learning the same thing, right, which is available on YouTube, right, then you are missing on the real stuff, right? So that is how I'll differentiate things, right? Having a structured course is important, but what will differentiate a real person getting into top companies is this, right? How was things working in Swiggy, right? How did you solve this problem in a very detailed way, right? Right now, we haven't even discussed about Decathlon, Swiggy, Walmart, or IDFC Bank, right? But when you get into the real stuff, you will understand, okay, this is what we did. This is why we did this, right? This is why we didn't do this, right? All of those questions will keep in your mind, right? You have to question it, okay, why we can do it, right? Now, when I understand, right, I can apply it at some point of time, or I can get through those case studies rounds, right? Okay, why is batching important, right? So Swiggy is doing there are two orders which have come at a very nearby location, right? Let's say I'm living in Bangalore in a Shobha society, right? There are thousands of flats here, right? It is a chance that you will have two orders at a very similar time, right? What if the restaurant was also in a similar location, right? What if I do one delivery guy will bring both the two orders at the same point of time, right? He'll wait there, even if there's a gap of 15 minutes, right? And that will reduce a lot of cost for me. That is what we call it as batching, right? This was one of the case studies that came to me when I was interviewing for Swiggy, right? So all of these things, right? What I feel is if someone would have taught me all of this, right, how things were, that would have given me a lot of edge, right? That is my thought process, right? Eventually, learning tools is also important. Learning basic things is also important, right? And structured code provides you that, so you can take that route also. That also works.
And so, just to answer your question, doing an MS in data science is not mandatory. Okay? Just because you did transportation technology, okay, there could be chance that okay, you don't qualify for the eligibility criteria, right? But that doesn't mean that you have to do master in data science. No, you can get away with it. Like there are a lot of people who hasn't done data science, like masters, and masters in data science is something new. It didn't even exist, a few years ago, right? Now that the trend is going towards that, it's new, right? Even data engineering, for instance, there's no masters or bachelors or anything in data engineering, right? It's still the trend's heading that way. So again, you don't have to do a master's in data science. You can get away with it. You can learn the skills yourself, take some courses online, right? And you're working as a data analyst. So that's a good starting point. You can, go up the ladder from there. I think that's all for now. I think we don't have
anyone with any other question, right? If you are here, I'll probably take one more last question. You can unmute yourself and share your thoughts.
It's better to unmute. Yeah, if you could unmute yourself and just ask, it's better that way. Anyone?
Hi Gaurav. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I would like to have my resume reviewed by you. As I work as a data analyst I have worked on multiple data models, drawing insights for everyone, and I have put those points in my resume. And I have also worked closely with gender prediction models for a company, working closely with the data scientists and so. But yeah, how can I do like reach out to you, share my resume?
LinkedIn, connect with me on LinkedIn if you're not connected, right? I've shared my link. I'll probably share it again. I have a top mate session, right, which I generally open it on weekends, right, only for one or 2 hours, right? That's the time that I can do. But share me a message on LinkedIn, right, probably, and I'll open some time for you on top mate. We can connect one-on-one, and we'll probably discuss around your resume, right? Or probably, as I've mentioned earlier, right, in one of my posts, right, I'll open this, the way this session has happened. I'll probably open one session for resume reviews, right? We'll pick out 10-15 resumes, but I'll give you an idea as to how to build a resume, what's the missing block that you're doing, right? And that's the idea, right? So you can connect there, or you can connect personally, right? So it's up to you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, good. Anyone else?
Yep. Any other questions before? Again, don't. I just want to remind everyone: don't forget to fill out the refund form if you want a refund. Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, Gaurav.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Good.
Hello, Gaurav. Are there any websites to practice SQL? Because on Lead Code, only I think there are 230 questions, or only 80s are free. I have also done. I'm also done with Stata Scratch, SQL Zoo. I did all that question. But are there any website which can give me a premium question for free?
Premium, start with Data Lemma, right? I'll share you this post. Okay, go through this. Data Lemma is pretty good, right? Stata Scratch, if you've done it right, you can move to Data Lemma part. I think that will help you out with those questions, right? Go through this. What are the 5-6 websites that you can try, right? There's something called as mode analytics, right? I was just looking into that and I felt that it's good, right? So you can try that as well. Mode analytics, but
and the question and the
Data Lemma is actually good, right? Data Lemma has lots of interview questions from top companies, right? You can practice it. Lead Code has it. Stata Scratch has it, right? You can find so many questions on YouTube where people have already solved all of those questions, right? So you can pick from there. In GitHub, people have shared all of their questions and solutions, right? So anything you can pick it up, right, and you can start solving it out. Okay.
Thank you.
I think Gaurav made our job a lot easier by picking up all the questions by himself.
Hi, Ashit, would you be able to take one question more?
Sure.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. So Gaurav, and to all the panel members, I wanted to know one thing. So,
what's your name?
My name is Nikhil Patel.
Okay.
Yeah. So I just wanted to know. So I'm working as a data analyst, and so there are other projects going parallelly in my teams, which is like related to data science. Data science. So I just want to be aware of what the people what they are doing there. So I want to develop a basic understanding. So just in case, like later on in the career, I want to like get that started or be aware of like how the things are working. So could you tell me like how to begin it? And so I don't want to get deep into it. I'm like satisfied with the work that I'm doing, and I really enjoy doing this part of the analytics work. And it is more on like let's say I would say the business analytics part. So I'm more keen about the business case studies rather than getting into extensive data science work. So just to have that understanding that okay, this could be done in this way, or this is being done in this way. So how could I develop that? If you could suggest me something.
Yeah, Ashit, you are taking that question.
Basically, your question is you want to get a shallow understanding of data science. Is that right?
Yeah, fair.
Okay. So I think start with the Andrew Ng course. It is there, I think, on YouTube as well and Coursera as well. That will give you a pretty good understanding of how things are generally working in data science. Anything beyond that, that will lead you to more depths. So I think that is a great starting point.
All right. Thank you so much.
I don't know if you guys mentioned book because I didn't listen. So there's also a book, hands-on. What was it? I can send you the PDF of that book. So if you haven't checked that out, you can also check that book out alongside Andrew Ng's course.
Okay, so I think that's it for today. So everyone, I hope you have all filled out the refund form, and Shakib is saying something. Okay, so thanks a lot, Gaurav, for joining us today, and I hope you had a great time. This recording will be uploaded on YouTube, and we'll be making a LinkedIn post so that, and also we'll be mailing it over to you as well. So, and also feel free to check out Gaurav's LinkedIn profile. I think he has sent the link in the chat. Feel free to connect with us as well. And yeah, thanks for joining, everyone. See you soon.
Thanks everyone. Yeah.
Thanks, Gaurav, once again. Thanks, Gaurav, once again for coming on the show. We appreciate it, and we'll see if we can do more of this sort of things in future, hands-on or something. We'll discuss and I'll let you guys know.
Well, thanks everyone. Thanks for taking your time. Hope this helps something. Right? If you have something right on personal level, right, where I can help you, try connecting with me on LinkedIn, right? Share me a message that we've connected here, right? And I'll try to find some time, or we can connect on Document, right? So that's something that I can do.
All right.
Cool. Thanks everyone. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, everyone.